everybody. Welcome to a special session of the Alexa office hours. You may notice something a little bit different happening here in that Jeff is currently unavailable today. He's online, but he can't come for office hours, so I am taking over. I'm Stefania Sharp, and I'll have somebody else joining me as well to help answer all of your questions and maybe just chat a little bit about Alexa. So let me invite my buddy in. Hey, Ryan, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey, everybody. My name is Ryan Matthews, Senior SA in the Games team. How is everyone doing today?
Overall, looks pretty good. Hi, Trade Last. So be kind to us. This is our first time taking over office hours, but maybe we'll steal it from Jeff more often. So a quick note to get us started today, I do want to bring up that we have Alexa Live coming up on July 21st. You can register today for that. We'll be talking about a lot of features at Alexa Live. I'm actually going to be speaking in one of the sessions, in which is jam-packed. As usual, I can't tell you what we're going to talk about, but I think you'll be excited for some of the stuff that we've been working on. So you can just go to developer.com, amazon.com/Alexa, and learn more about Alexa Live there. Otherwise, yeah, office hour takeover. This is Jeff with a different skin.
This is one of the new features that we're going to be announcing later on. Or I can't say that.
Yeah, Alexa will replace your face. All right, well, let's get us started. Again, we're new to this, so easing in here, but happy to answer any burning questions. Otherwise, we're going to chat a little bit and do a little bit of an interactive build session here. So Ryan truly genuinely has no idea what I'm going to expose him to now.
A little nervous.
I invited him to start to work with me on just kind of having some fun while we were talking here with you on Alexa. What's the story with the cage? Do you put unpredictable workers in there? Oh,
we can't comment on that, actually.
There's a cage by me. Yeah, there used to be a dog here. Again, a lot easier to do this from my desk than it is to do it from a room with a ton of echo. But we did used to have a dog sitting on my floor. As you can see, so it's very quiet. There's nobody else here but me, and obviously Ryan and all of you. Yeah, we used to have a dog in the office. Their owner is working from home, so we don't have the dog now.
I do miss that.
We can certainly give our titles and position at Amazon. And I actually don't think I gave mine. So I am Stefania Sharp. I'm a senior solutions architect with the Alexa team. I actually worked with the skills team for about 3.5 years. And then recently I now work with the Alexa Smart Properties team. So Legoland and reintroduce his title.
Great. Yep, I'm a senior SA. I'm on the games team, so I work exclusively with game partners to bring very exciting and fun games to to Alexa.
So Jao Paulo, pardon me if I mispronounce your name, says one of his prospects is a large company in the consulting and services sector. They have gifted their employees with over 3,000 Echo Dots and have now decided to create content for their employees and want to know a way to restrict access to the skill to people within the organization. I imagine that we can do this with account linking. Are there other methods? So that's actually a really poignant question, considering I work with the Smart Properties team. So we have something called Alexa for Hospitality, which will allow you to do fleet management. This is where you manage multiple devices within one console. This is designed for companies that want to own their own devices. And so we have a couple options that they could use where they could fleet manage their those 3,000 Echo Dots. And then what they can do is build skills that will only be deployed for their employees. And we think of them as kind of like private skills. We can send you some more information about that. Actually, Ryan, if you can find a link to Alexa for hospitality, that would be super handy. So that's one way you can do it. The other way, if you don't want to go about doing it from a kind of Alexa for business standpoint, is you could do account linking. And what you do is you just have to know which emails are authorized to access that skill. It does mean that anyone can see the skill, so you want to be extra careful that it's restricted, and you would have to go through some extra steps to ensure that it's private. But otherwise, it's another way to restrict a skill. Oh, yeah, it would be, yeah, if you are outside of the US, you cannot use Alexa for properties. So, yeah, the best method here would be to use account linking. and have the authentication system be the corporate database, and then you would just have to verify that this email is valid and can use the skill. PIN codes I wouldn't recommend, just because those are not very reliable, easy to kind of spoof or steal. But it is, if you wanted to do a second factor authentication with a PIN code, you could also try that. All right.
We're getting some questions here on what happened to Jeff. Don't worry, everybody. He will be back at regularly scheduled office hours next week, so not to worry about that.
Yeah, Jeff is, I'm sure, around, but we've temporarily replaced him. It is ironic that Jeff is gone on Prime Day. It does not.
We can also not confirm or deny, any lightning deal selling. So we'll see.
Just scrolling back to make sure I can see the questions. Kevy K3V on Twitch. I think I'm missing some background on this question. I don't know, Ryan, if you see some more information about that question.
No, I don't see an earlier post.
If you could explain a little more on what it is, we can help you there. All right, let me not do picture-in-picture. Leah ERB. Give me a second as I read some of these questions. Leah has an interesting, more design question than anything. She says, I have a conversations dialogue question. Are skill prompts for a pair of values over and over until done? We anticipate a diversion if the user will ask a question at some point, at which point we might either start over or continue. In dialogues, should we incorporate the interruption question in the middle of our dialogues, or simply have dialogues that start with the interruption question, if that makes sense? So this one is, I think Ryan would agree, this one is more of a personal preference in terms of and if we had Allison Atwell, one of our designers, she'd have a very perfect and correct opinion. We are but developers, Ryan and I, so we'll try and guide you as best we can. So the way I like to approach conversational dialogues is that you should always try and put the shortest path first. So I would recommend, at any point in time, putting that interruption question, kind of start with that. Just in case, the user doesn't have to sit through a ton of dialogue. They don't have to guess about how to get around. It'll also help you to kind of break out of that flow easier. But I don't know, Ryan, if you have an opinion on that.
No, I think the shortest path to get to proceed with whatever the skill logic is the appropriate way to do it. I think Bird Bars has another question. Amazon Pay skill failed certification for invocation phrase, including the word enable. The Amazon Pay skill certification requirement or the invocation phrase must contain a company or brand. Our Amazon seller account company name is Enabled Inc. How best should we handle getting certification approval?
That's a fun one. So that is one, obviously, I mean, you probably have realized that the reason that this is somewhat failing is that enable is a word you can use to enable skills. And so the best route you can go about is to contact support to get them to try and get you some sort of exception or deviation path for that. Again, you are in a strange Enabled Inc. scenario, and we can help connect you to our developer advocacy group. Unless Ryan knows another trick.
Nothing that I can share here, unfortunately. Kevy Kev is mentioning that the auto mod stopped at the first part of my question. Don't know if they'll let it go through or not.
Unfortunately, I cannot see the auto mod messages, so if you can rephrase it somehow to try and get the question across, be happy to answer. Oh, Aswet on YouTube has a question about the skill activation API, which I have actually not worked with. And so this is one where we may follow up with you offline, unless Ryan, you have worked with the skill activation API.
Have not. I'm busy Googling as we speak here. What's the question?
So it's, hi all, we are trying Alexa Skill Activation API, but my user has to log in twice. I am using logon with Amazon security provider. How can we avoid double login while using Skill Activation API? I suspect this is actually probably a token issue, and you may not be either retrieving or storing the token properly. That would be the only reason I can think of that it would be prompting a second login, but we'll have Ryan investigate and hopefully get you a more direct answer here. And I'll pull that back up in a second. Zhao says on LinkedIn, says, one of my prospects wants to have a way to create ROI for his skill, but we don't have ISP or Alexa shopping available. Is it possible to create vouchers, coupons to be rewarded based on voice game results? What options do I have? Yeah, so there's some, if you look into kind of the certification guidelines around policy, there is some leeway in terms of sweepstakes type items. This would require you to get things using personal profile API, like an email address or another contact option. I would kind of tease or hint that if you wait until Alexa Live, you'll find you'll have way more options to choose from in terms of ROI. And so that's something to look forward to then. But in the short term, if you want to use personal profile API combined with, being within the sweepstakes criteria, you can sort of randomly send out these tokens or vouchers. Again, I would always caution against anything where you are speaking in token or vouchers into Alexa itself, just because you'll have some confusion. It's easily spoofed. People figure out tokens all the time. So that's one method. But yeah, I would say check out Alexa Live next month, and you'll see we have some really cool stuff coming in terms of monetization. All right. I think other than the skill activation API question, we've covered everything up until now. So now I can subject Ryan to his surprise. All right, so to fill some of the time, because, just in case we had some space between questions. Yeah, Aswat posted a follow-up to the skill activation API question. So it seems as though your local version is not storing that token. And so essentially it's never treating it like you authenticated the first time. And so that maybe it's the second time that it's kind of sticking. We can investigate a little bit further. It's not something that I can kind of debug here, but happy to connect with you offline over YouTube, and we can try and send some follow-up information.
Do we have his handle, Steph?
I do. Well, we have a handle. You act like I know how to internet. It's time to project Amazon VR online shopping built with Alexa. I mean, sky's the limit, guys. I don't know if I want a VR shop with Alexa, but actually that would be intriguing. Let's just be, with your device and kind of swipe through. It's the future. Birdbar says, can developers create Amazon Pay skills to sell affiliate products and services? Not currently. So Amazon Pay is for external products. The thing being is that with Amazon Pay, you're expected to handle, shipping address, payment, payment beyond, just working with Amazon Pay, as well as fulfillment. And the fulfillment part is really key there. So if you wanted to do, affiliate products and services, you would have to start kind of be the in-between for getting those sold. And considering the commission with Amazon Pay, I don't know that necessarily it would be advantageous for you to take that route.
Aswad, if you can post the link to your question, we can follow up, make sure we get a response for you.
It looks like he already raised it in the dev forum, yeah. So we'll get a response to that. All right. Oxygen Box on Twitch says, since he works with game devs, I'm wondering if Ryan has any top pitfalls he has seen regarding voice games. So, fun fact, Ryan and I both worked in games. Ryan is now way beyond my skill level with it. So he's an expert in web API for games, has worked with some of our great game developers. So perfect person to grill about games. But all right, Ryan, top pitfalls in voice games.
I'd say give the user a reason to come back and limit their play. So there's one partner that I work with, and it had a mechanism to come back to the game every single day. Again, you could log in, you get bonuses, you get streaks, you get extra points, you unlock certain things within the game. But a very early version of that game didn't have any of that, and so we saw our monthly active users really drop because users would get tired of the game, right? They would play the game on a single day, day in, day out, and then there wouldn't be a reason really for them to come back day after day. So if you can kind of like almost like artificially limit the amount that someone can do that, that's one way that you can increase the stickiness of your game. Leaderboards are very helpful, but make sure that they're relevant. Saying that, you're number 546 of every player that has ever played this game doesn't really provide a lot of context. If you're able to provide some context, like players this week or players today, or you're able to use something from the personal profile API to get a person's location, like large geography, if you know that they're in Canada or the US or what have you. I'm a big fan of the web API for games. It does have limited device support. So for those that are not familiar, the web API for games is one of two multimodal frameworks that you have on Alexa. The first is APL, or the Alexa Presentation Language, but the web API for games allows you to create a web app in HTML5 in a framework like a Pixie or Phaser, 3JS, something like that, and then you can voice enable it. It works on our show devices and our Fire TV devices, not some of our third-party devices like a Facebook portal. But you can create some amazingly interactive and beautiful games with Alexa. So I definitely recommend that. I'm just going to mute my device now. Live stream fail. So those are a couple of things. If you have more pointed questions, I'm happy to, because again, if you're playing like a music trivia game versus like a casual game versus like something else, my guidance would vary. So if you can give me a little bit more about what it is that you are developing, I can help provide some more pointed responses. There's a lot happening in the chat.
Yeah, it also looks like Kevin was able to repost his question on YouTube. So Kevin's basically talking about an utterance conflict. So I've defined two utterances in which I can say I consumed calories of food or I ate calories of food. And when I say I ate 130 calories of bread, it thinks that 8 is interpreted as 8. And as you can tell from me talking, it sounds exactly the same. So there's a couple of reasons for this. Again, one is because you do have, and actually Ryan is our resident expert on
Homophones.
Great you're here today. Ryan is our resident expert on homophones. So Ryan, why don't you give some advice on how to overcome homophones within skills?
Yeah, so this is a tough problem to solve, mainly because even as humans, if you don't have context, homophones are almost impossible to disambiguate, right? So if I said 8, you have no idea if that means did I eat a sandwich or do I have 8 apples? I don't know why I picked that example. So first I would say is within your interaction model, have a sufficient number of sample utterances with appropriate context. I don't know if you're asking for just like a single slot value, because that's very difficult to do. Normally, you'd have to disambiguate that in the back end. You can also leverage dynamic entities. So if you have like a follow-up question, like is that a verb or a noun, something like that, you can use that. So dynamic entities, I'll see if I can find it real quick, are dynamically loading slot values at runtime on a per turn basis. There's also a couple of third-party repos that you can use in like Node.js or something like that that can help you disambiguate that. The last thing I'd recommend using if you haven't tested it yet is the ASR or the Nlu Evaluation Tools in the developer console. You can run through and create a plethora of test cases and then run that through every iteration on your model. So you can get a better understanding of how your model is performing with each tweak or tune that you get. Because when I was working with a partner on this exact problem, that was one of the biggest things is, we had a very large interaction model. We would make some changes here, we'd make some changes here. And then I'd ask some partners and some folks to test. And it was really hard to say, like, did that make it worse? Or did that make it better? It's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So having a good QA test set to understand, what is my baseline, I would say is very important to have at the outset so that every tweak and tune that you do, you can get a good baseline for where you are.
Another option you can take is actually to turn the verb into a slot itself and see how that performs for you. So instead of having 8 as a utterance that you've explicitly written in Alexa, you can actually create a slot for the action of eating, and that will, you would have slot and then the slot for number, and that may help you with some of the performance, because then it's expecting 2 slots to be filled instead of just an utterance and 1 slot. So you can try out any of these methods. Be curious how it performs for you. At the worst case, you can pull in the 8,130 and just assume nobody's going to say that they ate 8,000 calories and just kind of cut it off there.
Yeah, that's a really good point, right? If you can design around it rather than attacking it technically, that's another very valid way to solve that problem.
Yeah, I would consider that an extreme case, but again, I would recommend look at dynamic entities, create an eating slot, or just do some validation on your back end that says, what is the max calories I expect somebody to ever report in this skill. And the worst case is you might get some feedback or reviews where they're like, hey, I wanted to report eating 8,000 calories. Why don't you accept that? And go from there. Yeah, trade less, just like that. And you probably will see better performance just because, again, it'll expect to fill 2 slots. So trade less, writing out the utterance here, eating number of calories. Again, it'll try and fill 2 slots and it may perform better. But let us know. I am on Twitter. I don't tweet about Alexa. You can also find me on LinkedIn with Stefania Sharp. So either option, but I'd be curious to see how that performs for you. And then I can tell Ryan that he's wrong.
It happens quite often, more often than you'd think.
All right, let me go back and see. Luis on YouTube asks, can we integrate other pay solutions for countries where the Amazon Pay network is not available? Luis, I would just say kind of review our policy guidelines around payment services. There are some niche details to that. I would recommend kind of reviewing that and then seeing what your options are from there. Typically, we restrict things to either Amazon Pay, just because we want to ensure that all customers have a great experience.
O'Neill Fonseca, apologies for mispronouncing your name, had a question on what's the best format for games on voice interaction devices like trivia games, strategy games, memory games, etc. Some of our popular games are of the trivia format. Trivia works really well for Alexa because it's a very much a simple question and answer type of response, and you're purposely limiting the things that the customer could say, whether it be like artists or song titles or colors or makes of vehicles, etc. So you can create a very tight interaction model that way. However, there's some really interesting and fun strategy games. The Dark Citadel is a really cool RPG, like Dungeons and Dragons RPG kind of game, and that developer has a couple of other similar titles of that. There's also Pac-Man that was released. It is a child-directed skill, but if you want to speak Wakanese and have Pac-Man go up, down, left, right, is a beautiful game, recreated, has that retro feel to it. And then lastly, the one that I'll plug is My Loft. So think of a very toned down light version of The Sims where you're creating your loft and you have guests that check in. Again, beautifully rendered 3D environments, multimodal devices only. But those are two atypical games that I'd love to see more of on Alexa. So if there are game developers on the stream, definitely check those out.
Yeah, I would also say it really depends on, your creativity. So people like content, they like new content, they like to come back and have something different to play. And
Yeah.
so if you are somebody who can take an adventure game and constantly build on it, which I have seen in this community, those, people like playing those kind of games. Trivia games are easy. I can do them quickly. I can do them with my family. So it really depends on your creativity, where your passion's at. Like if you are a whiz at dad jokes and trivia, like build stuff for that, because you'll tend to build more content for it and keep people coming back. Giant on LinkedIn asked, says I have a question about Alexa Auto. Would you be able to answer? That is the one area neither of us have any expertise, unfortunately. I see somebody might be able to answer in chat. However, if you want to post your question, we do talk with the Alexa Auto solutions architects a lot, and so happy to hit one of them up as well and try and get you an answer offline. All right, just catching up here. Dynamic entities are great in game skills, is what A. Witters is saying. I agree. Oxygen box. Chat gives me life. All right. It's a bit of a quiet. I'm going to finally torture Ryan. So Ryan and I have been friends for quite a while, so we enjoy messing with each other. So I anticipated that maybe we wouldn't spend the whole time answering questions. And it's funny that you should talk about games, because I love games. So both Ryan and I are big video game fans when we have time outside of our schedules. And one game that I remember playing as a kid is something called the Yukon Trail. And it is lovingly known as the Canadian Oregon Trail. And as you know, Oregon Trail, or you may not know, Oregon Trail is actually getting a redesign right now, making it a much better game. So it was another, Yukon Trail was another game from MEC, which was one of those educational games. And the Yukon Trail was designed to teach about the gold rush and about you go from Seattle, which is apropos because Ryan and I are both located here in Seattle, going up to Canada to prospect for gold. And it is a very old game. I played it in the 90s and I actually haven't played it since the 90s. I briefly used an emulator to try it out last night. Actually somebody did bring up that we do have the Slack where you can get all of your questions answered that Ryan and I cannot answer today. Also, if there are questions that we didn't answer that you would like a follow-up on, post in that Slack and I will be happy to respond there. It's a great point. Zella, I'm not even going to try your username, but thank you. All right. And so anyways, back to Yukon Trail. So everybody always talks about Oregon Trail and about how devastating it was. This is my favorite nostalgic game. It is, Windows 3. I think I played it actually on Windows 95.
Oh God,
it's so old. I think I played it in 95 actually. And so the idea being is that you start in Seattle, and I actually took some fun screenshots last night of the game. You can play it on emulators online. That's basically the only spot you can play it. Zella.b or Alex. Okay, good to know your username. And so, as you can see, super fancy graphics, which is pretty.
that's nostalgic.
I thought it's pretty advanced for its time.
Yep.
Giant asks, do we have some kind of Alexa skills that will connect kids for their online classrooms? That's a great question. So we do have a few features available with Alexa just today that you can try out. And I know that there has been some universities that use Alexa. But today you could, a lot of kids are using Zoom. So we do have the Zoom app within display devices like the Echo Show. And you could say things like start my Zoom meeting and she will ask for the passcode. So that is one way that you could connect to a classroom and kind of have them engage just with a screen device. Otherwise, we don't have anything for, like Blackboard or any of the classroom software right now, to my knowledge. All right. Okay, so anyways, so this is what Yukon Trail looks like. Ryan was not expecting this at all. Do you know any examples of massively multiplayer Alexa games? Milton, I do not. Ryan, do you know an MMO?
No, nothing that I would classify as anything like massively multiplayer.
I also think that Ryan and I may have a very high standard for what is considered MMO. But I am, there are with Web API for games and with some of the APIs, it is possible you could start to create kind of a massive online player experience. I would say, the things you have to deal with is creating a solution for lobbies, creating a solution for handling that many people interacting at once and having it truly feel like an MMO. I think where you see a lot more skills is in the async. How about minorly? Milton asks, how about minorly multiplayer? So we do have multiplayer games. Games like Song Quiz are multiplayer where you can, kind of do async experiences with someone online. There's also, help me out here, Ryan. My mind just blanked on all the multiplayer games.
Yep. Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? Family Duel, a couple of other games.
Yeah, so there's a few that have done it. Again, a lot of the challenge is in how do I matchmake people? How do I do lobbies? A lot of people use third-party APIs to achieve that.
Yeah.
And again, also, coordinating people. How do I use things like notifications to tell to let my friends know that we're playing online? How do I link friends together? So there's concepts like friend codes or other ways to link two players together so that they can send game invites to make it feel like they're playing together in that multiplayer sense.
So here's another, this I mentioned earlier on the stream, Dark Citadel. This is the Dungeons & Dragons RPG-esque game. So he's done, a developer here has done a couple of really cool things. To make it feel like you're actually traversing the same dungeon. You're seeing the same items. So definitely check that out. This is another Web API game.
All right. Thanks for all of your questions and for being kind to us. I know we're new, but maybe we'll take over Jeff's stream more often.
Let us know in the comments below.
5-star.
I've always wanted to do that.
So the reason I kind of brought this up as something fun we could do is Giant says, I wish to create a skill to summarize the classroom notes to the kids or students in general. That's going to be cool during this pandemic. So I think, Giant, you can certainly do that. It really depends on the setting. So you want to be careful, or be conscious of the fact that you do have, people under the age of 13 interacting with the device and how much in terms of notes do you want to store. I think the question here is this something that you want to use at home, something you want to use in an actual classroom setting? Note taking is not necessarily new for Alexa, but really just want to be kind of thinking about what environment you're in. Kids' classrooms tend to be very loud. So also, how do you accurately get notes without all the extra noise? Is your primary user going to be a teacher?
I'd say, JF, another thing to consider too is voice may not be the best medium for that. Unless it's literally a speech that you're trying to summarize, most of this problem that you're trying to solve is in the back end, right? It's natural language processing. How do I actually create an abstract of a long block of text? There's lots of tools out there, lots of open source options to actually accomplish that. But something that perhaps you could do is, again, if you had some sort of streaming mic solution to summarize those notes and then use Alexa as a method of interrogating that. Have there been any new notes posted today? Is there a note on, this topic that you could categorize? Or as Steph was mentioning earlier, using it for notifications. A new note has now been available. Again, some of these NLP tools aren't necessarily real time. They take time to process in the background. So I would consider using Alexa as a means to get access to the notes and not necessarily kind of like sit there and listen to like the TTS just like round on or like read off a 30-minute classroom summary note. But interesting question.
Yeah, especially with kids. I don't think I can't even get my niece to listen to something for more than 5 minutes. So I don't know if you would get a kid to listen to Alexa. All right.
All right,
So
Steph, I want to see the Yukon Trail here.
I mean, we'll get one dialogue done. So the reason I selected this is because, as Ryan knows, and probably not a lot of people know, I actually like choose your own adventure branching narrative games. I have worked with quite a few of them on Alexa. These are some of the harder ones to do, again, because it's difficult to create new content for them. They tend to be large to start out with. So the more you can make it a simple snack experience that's also enjoyable, the better off you're going to be. And so Yukon Trail is one where it's very similar to Oregon Trail. You have a couple options you pick from the beginning, and it was funny to kind of go through the beginning of the game and remember how strange some of the content was. One is you pick which ship you're going to go on, so which direction you take to go up to Alaska. You have a companion that comes with you. This person will determine whether you strike gold or you strike nothing. And then you choose various items to take with you. One of the items being kittens. I don't remember what they were for, and so maybe just a comfort item, but I do recall that being quite a strange thing. But you
Can
make
you
these
pet the cats? Can we pet the
no,
cats? No.
it's the 90s. We
Oh.
don't have the ability to pet in the 90s. Actually, I lie. What Tamagotchi was a thing, right? And so,
Very much so.
and so you have these different options you can choose from. And the reason I selected this is a tool that I've been working with for over 2 years now, and one that I love to use for rapid prototyping of ideas on Alexa is something called Skillflow Builder. And so Skillful Builder was created by the Alexa Games team. You can find it in the Alexa Games repo on GitHub. Literally called Skillflow Builder, and it was open sourced last year, so it's kind of been released out into the wild. It is a very large tool, and it is a great tool for taking these kind of narratives and quickly turning them into something you can demo. I also use it for non-narrative games, and so I've been using Skillflow Builder since it was an alpha. Something I played around with. I've written plenty of things we call extensions. So at its base level, Skillflow Builder has a lot of great features that you can leverage. But if you want to add anything new, so new features that come out with Alexa, or just features that weren't integrated into Skillful Builder to begin with, you can just create something called an extension. It's all done in TypeScript, so you will learn a little TypeScript on the way. But once you kind of figure out how everything links together and how to get the different parts talking, it becomes quite easy to build some robust experiences. And so the great thing about Skillful Builder to start out with is there's actually a feature called Skillful Builder Editor. So we are going to build the beginning of Yukon Trail without really touching any code. At least that's the promise I'm telling you right now. So we're going to give it a shot. We're going to see how far we get. We'll see how successful we are. Web API extension for Skillful Builder. So Gold's Zulu asked on Twitch, anyone adding the Web API extension for Skillful Builder yet? So ironically, someone on our team that we tried to kind of bribe into coming on stream today had built a Web API extension for Skillful Builder. So I will talk with him about potentially open sourcing his extension to get you started. We were using it also for things like audio layering. So Skillful Builder natively has the ability to somewhat audio layer, but it also relies on kind of creating these audio snippets that are stored in S3. So if you have a very active skill that a lot of users are using, and it kind of there's a cost there essentially. And so if you don't have to use audio layering, if you can maybe build an extension for APLA, it's a lot better. So yeah, I will talk to him and see if he would like to open source his HTML extension. It's pretty cool. We used it for an internal kind of test build that we were doing.
I wish you guys published that game. That was fun.
It was, again, a very big, complicated game, and had like 10 sub games in it. And there was a point, I think, when we lost some steam there. So that's the other thing I like to say about these narrative games is they're always, the idea behind them is quite large. And so for any narrative game builder on Alexa, I would highly recommend start with something very small and short that you can ensure that you'll actually get out there and then build and build on it. Don't be like me, where we just had this big grandiose idea that we built out, and then what ended up getting released was nothing because we couldn't finish. We had just such a big project. All right, so to get started with the editor, I'm first so there's a couple steps to get Skillful Builder set up that you can read about in the GitHub repo. Again, we're going to assume those already happened. This is like a cooking show where I'm just going to appear with the completed install and some debugging. One thing I would tell you is something that I ran into last night. So again, I've been using Skillful Builder since alpha, and so I recently lost my computer. Rest in peace, my old MacBook, and did a brand new fresh install. And one thing I noted is there are two options for deploying with Skillful Builder. There is the CloudFormation option, which they released with the open source. CloudFormation is great in this case because it will set up all the security profiles. It'll set up the S3 buckets. It'll basically set up everything you need, so you don't have to worry about going into your AWS console other than to get credentials to do that setup. There's also the Lambda option, which is the option that you would be familiar with as a skill builder if you are using AWS, where you need to set up an IAM profile to have access to Dynamo and things like that. What I found with CloudFormation is that this particular deployment does not like fresh installs. So I would recommend build a test story, as we call them. We call them Skillful Builder stories. Build a test story, deploy that. It may succeed, it may fail, and then build the second one, which is going to be your actual test story, and attempt that deploy. It's a known issue that we are looking into on how to fix, but it is one I would hate for you to get started with Skillful Builder and then come into the Slack and tell me that you're having issues with it. So just try a double deploy and it should work for you. If not, let me know and I'll add that to some of our investigations on how to fix it. So now that I've done that spiel, we're going to back up to where I have Skillful Builder installed. And one thing I can do is I can run something called the Skillflow Builder editor. We have a couple more people that have joined.
No new questions yet.
No new questions yet. That's good to know. So I can create an installer for the editor, but because I like to keep things a little bit more temporary, I am just going to run the editor every time that I need it. Skillful Builder uses Yarn quite extensively. So again, if you're not familiar with that, do a little research on Yarn. Otherwise, I like to summarize it as I just get a lot of messages in my window for a few minutes, and then I have what I need.
Live build.
Live build.
It worked.
Of course it worked. I tested it earlier. There's the kitchen scene. All right. So again, one of the things I really like about Skillful Builder is it's versatile for both developers and non-developers. I will say when it comes to deploying your skill, you will need a developer involved. So it's not completely code-free here. But again, it is, I'll make it bigger in a second. It's not completely code-free, but it is a great way, as I mentioned, to prototype without ever having to actually deploy. Oh, I can't make it bigger. So we're just going to deal with this size. Yeah, I can't make it bigger. So I apologize for the tiny size on the text. And I will just read to you what the dialogue is. As we
line 1, / special scene.
And we're actually going to get out of this code view here in a minute. So there is a code aspect. At its foundation, Skillful Builder relies on these idea of scenes. And you can think of a scene as like a scene in a movie. So I like to, when I'm working with Skillful Builder, visualize myself as though I'm working on like movies frame by frame by frame. What monitor am I using? I have an ultra-wide Dell monitor. So, I get all this space and tiny print. Trade last. All right. So starting from here, I actually have an existing story. So I'm going to create a new one by going to the new project, and we're going to title it Yukon Trail Alexa. I have a couple of options actually for building. You can start with a quiz game, a tutorial, an example story. These are very similar to what you would see if you were to build an Alexa skill from scratch in the CLI. You're just seeing very similar projects. We're just going to do a blank one, and it's going to create it in my documents folder. Don't need to change anything else there. Oh, we lost audio. Oh, Ryan lost audio. He will come back here in a minute.
There we go. I can hear you and see you now.
Fantastic. Hopefully everybody else can hear and see us as well. But let us know if you can't. All right. In this very sad and blank story, I have a start. So all Skillflow Builder stories or games start with a start. That's a horrible...
They begin with a start.
They begin with a start. And this is somewhat of a reserved word. And you can read more about these in the documentation. We're going to start with the tutorial. So I switched to guided mode. This will, again, take us away from this tiny code view and put us into a slightly bigger text view. And I'm going to start with, probably a welcome message. This is the part where I needed all the dialogue from Yukon Trail. So we're just going to make it up as we go. One fun fact about the game is it actually starts in, I think, 1857, which was a year before the gold rush started. But they do use a lot of we need Gold Zula says we need Ezra back to the team. Oh, poor Ezra. Ezra has moved on to other things, but I still keep in touch with him. He's a super nice guy. Anyways, so we're going to work with a welcome message. And so you could do this if you were prototyping a skill. I would just say, welcome to my test skill. So, I might have some music in here as well. And so you can't see because it's super tiny, but there is a kind of tooltip or a suggestion on how to drag in audio files. So these say strings work just like SSML. You can change the voice if you want. You can add in audio files, and you can start to create various snippets in Skillful Builder to pull them in. And again, this is great. Requires some knowledge of Alexa development. So I wouldn't expect somebody with no Alexa development knowledge to come in and start figuring out how to put different voices in. But you as a developer working with them can set things up such that they can have snippets for like this SSML voice, or maybe this sound, other things they can reference and make it a little bit easier for them to pull it in. So we're saying
Starfinder was built with SFB, wasn't it?
Yes. So Starfinder, which is, if you're not familiar, Starfinder is developed by Paizo Inc., which is one of the top 2 tabletop RPG developers in the US and I believe in the world. And so they have a what we'd like to call a space adventure game called Starfinder. And you have various classes that you can play. And one thing they wanted to do was to develop a way for users to immerse themselves in the Starfinder universe, but without having to deal with all the, what are the rules? What are all the characters? How do I min-max? I'm gonna get real nerdy here with my TTRPG knowledge. And another component is how do I deal with ship combat, which for a newbie when I was doing it is a lot.
It's very the skill is very noob friendly. Like it's very approachable.
So you can play one of a couple of characters. So I believe you can play Keskadai. You can play. They have an AI kind of character, not really AI. I like to think of them as Data from Star Trek. So they have various characters you can play. They are voiced by professional voice actors. So if you're really nerdy, you'll spot some people from sci-fi in the game, and also from other various video games. And it's a great way to learn about the Starfinder universe and to learn about the Starfinder beginner box, which is a way you can play with friends in a physical setting. That thing we used to do, physical board game setting. And it just introduces you to the various mechanics in a fun way without having to kind of spend hours reading a book or learning. And then after that, if you want to keep your adventure going, you can get the beginner box and play with your friends. And so Starfinder is a very robust example of working with Skillful Builder and how to use various transitions. And they even have a combat mechanic, which I don't know that they open sourced. But a couple of the features that were turned into extensions came out of Starfinder. All right. Welcome to Yukon Trail.
Find some gold.
Let's find some gold. That's what they would say in the 90s.
Yep.
I'm going to get this right. Zella.b also referenced Ink.js, which I'm not familiar with, to develop skills for interactive stories. It sounds like it was from years ago. Yeah, we've had quite a few advancements. There's several different tools for prototyping or building interactive stories. Magic Door, I believe, had a solution as well at one point, at least for audio layering. And so people are getting much more advanced now that HTML is supported. I've seen some amazing skills come out that are, they have layered video, layered audio, different fun ways to use the mic, different fun ways to do something which I think is really creative, and that is have a companion physical app on the phone that also interacts with Alexa and allows you to, if you have a game where you're trying to keep secrets or maybe strategize with your friends, saying that out loud doesn't doesn't keep it a secret, right? And so having that companion app experience has been very interesting to see in Skills, and you can do that with the Alexa apps experience, where you can launch an app from Alexa or the reverse way. All right. Welcome to the Yukon Trail. Let's find some gold. And feel free, chat, if you want to help us build this. If you've played Yukon Trail, bonus points, but I don't expect everybody to have played it. It was niche for its time, and now it definitely shows my age.
You needed a 386 processor back in the day with 4 megs of RAM and 2 megs of hard drive space.
That's a lot. I remember the unfortunate random scenarios in which it would crash, and of course you would lose all your progress because save points weren't a thing, and so you would just be like, oh, I have to start over. And it reminds me of some of the more modern games where you're compelled by making choices and by having to get the perfect game, but you don't know what the perfect game is. I also heard there is an Easter egg cheat menu at the beginning that you can start to explore the game with. Dysentery is not. I don't believe Dysentery is actually in Oxygen Box, is in Yukon Trail. This is why I also like it. There feels like there's less death, and so it's a much more educational game. It's a little less dire. Again, you could fail in getting gold, but the whole goal in what you're doing is to just make correct choices to get to Alaska. Yeah, unfortunately, guys, I cannot make the screen any bigger. So we're just gonna verbally. We're just going to verbally do this. Yeah, I have no way to zoom in. But you don't really need to see much. There's not a lot going on in terms of this. I can also just take us out of... Here, how about I do this? We'll just hack it. All right.
Oh, there you go.
Bigger. Yeah, I did. Goldu, I can't change my resolution. Otherwise, we'll watch this whole stream crash right down on his face. All right. Okay, so I'm working with Skillful Builder. As you can see here, I have a say. This is you should, if you developing skills, speak and reprompt. Same exact concept. I can also add additional lines. So this is really great for Yukon Trail is a game, Sony X64. It's a game from 1994. Very old, by the same developers as the Oregon Trail. All right, and so with Skillful Builder, I can have multiple lines. This is a good visual component for how to break them up. And so I could say, welcome to Yukon Trail, and I could maybe have some audio play here, and then I could say, let's find some gold. It really isn't how you want it to be broken up. There's also the ability to do multiple different dialogue options. I couldn't tell you how to do it in the editor because I'm so used to doing it in code, but essentially you can set it up where there's a separator, and it'll randomly pick from one of your dialogue options. So this is just a random dialogue we can pick, but this is just going to be our menu. Again, don't expect greatness from this particular demo that we're going to build now in 5 minutes. Otherwise, the recap and reprompt. Reprompt is exactly what you would expect. This is where if the user doesn't respond, the next thing that she says will be the reprompt. Recap is something that you can call from within Skillflow Builder to get a shortened summary. This is particularly handy if you use something like repeat, in case the user hasn't quite figured out what you said, or if you want to direct them to shorten text from another part of Skillflow Builder. We're not going to do anything else because I didn't save. Save often. All right, now I'm going to save it. And if I were to look over here, I can hover over and you'll start to see branches that appear. And this shows me the choices I can make and how it moves throughout Skillful Builder. And so I can see the message, welcome to Yukon Trail, let's find some gold. And then I have something we call quick actions, which this is where it's going to go next. As you can see, because we only have one node right now, or one scene, as it were, it's just going to go right to the end and reset the skill. And so there are some reserved keywords like end that'll tell it to clear all the history about the user and restart itself. I can add additional actions. like save and go to scene. So this means I want you to save all the variables that have been stored, and I'll talk more about those in a little bit if I have time. Pause, this means save the user where they're at, exit the skill, potentially go to a pause scene, but otherwise I don't want you to restart what they were doing. And then as you can see, I can call the reprompts and the recaps and everything else. And then back means I can go back a level. In this case, it would do nothing because this is the first scene. But all right, so let's add a different component. So I'm going to add another scene. Actually, let's add a here action, or add another scene. Go to scene. I need to create one first. All right, so you see, as I clicked that plus icon to create a scene, it immediately created one that is connected to my start scene because I was in the go to scene selection. And then the two of them are linked together. And I can go back and forth and see how they connect. I can also create an additional scene that will also be connected to the start scene. So what I could do in start is I could give them a menu option. And when you're building really basic prototypes, you'll find that this is quite sufficient. You can just branch people through and you don't really want to worry about it. As you get into more complex prototypes or even building a skill with Skillful Builder, you want to figure out how to modularize various components. Menu is one of those that you may call multiple times, regardless of where the user is in the skill. And if you put it inside of the start scene, you're going to end up with a whole bunch of extra text that's read out every time they hit the menu. So you really want to start to figure out how to modularize. So I'm actually going to take this first start scene. I'm going to rename it menu. And a couple of, in the beginning of the Yukon Trail, you actually have the option to select one of the two ships. You can talk to a guy that's holding a sign that says, go to the outfitters to get your outfits. You get hints throughout the game that you need certain items, and the game will actually outright not let you move forward unless you get things like a companion. They don't want you to go alone to Alaska. I can't imagine why. Or, an outfit or items that you need to proceed. Exactly, without a moose. And you do start with 350 gold at beginning. So something I might have said in the start scene is read off that journal entry that you get at the beginning of the game. Now with voice, it becomes a clever dance of how much information do I give a user verbally, how much do I put on a display device, and where do I just prompt them to ask me these details. So in the menu, because I don't want to necessarily be reading off how much gold they have every time, I might add a menu option item to ask about, what are my resources? How much weight am I carrying? Weight is actually quite important in this game. And so going from there, I could say you can check your gold, ask how much you are carrying, or wow, and now we are hitting the limit of options, and I still have 3 options at the beginning of the game. So this is where we do live skill editing. I do want to give them the ability to know what they can do at the game. So possibly in the start, I would tell them, you can ask for inventory at any time, and it would do this sub menu of ask how much gold you're carrying. You have ask how much weight you are carrying. Gosh, this is hard. Or other options. But what I do want to give them at the beginning of the game is a Seattle menu and telling them where they can go. So you can talk to the ship, what they call those captains. Ask the shop salesman for information, or go into town. What would you like to do? Pandemic mode, can't travel for 16 months. This is very true. And so this would be my Seattle menu. I might want to rename it in case we come back to Seattle. I don't believe you do. It is kind of a one-way trip. Again, it's been a while since I've played this game. And that's kind of your only option. Now from there, I would add a here action. And so this is where I put in the utterances that I'm expecting them to provide to answer one of these menu options. And so one would be talk to the ship captains. Separate line, ship captains, tell how much I use the editor. Stop using comments, talk to captains.
What about ahoy or R?
Sure, Ryan.
Hey, you invited me.
I did invite you, didn't I? And so what'll happen when this is built and published into Alexa is that it'll actually create an entire intent that is comprised of these particular utterances, or it may create slot values. Tries to be intelligent about how it produces these. What you will notice when you go into your developer console to look at your Skillful Builder skill is that the name of the intents is completely nonsensical. It is machine generated, so it's slot A, slot B, or utterance A, utterance B. You can actually hard route into intents and create your own intents. You would just have to do something like, I would create an intent called talk to captains, and then I would have my here statement would actually be the intent itself. I do not recommend this, if only because it adds a level of complication. This is something when Skillful Builder was in early alpha, we did because they were still working on creating these robust utterance statements and avoiding duplicates. Now they have greatly improved it, and so you really wouldn't need to create your own intents, but you can if it's something where you're worried about being able to keep everything readable and easy to compose. Unfortunately, we are now out of time on the office hours, so I will have to cut this short. Maybe we can pick it up at another time and get past Seattle in our Yukon Trail adventure. I really want to thank you all for joining us today, asking questions, being such welcome hosts as our first time and potentially only time, depending on how.
Let us know if you want us to come back.
Let us know if you want us to come back. Thank you, Ryan, for joining me today and for being such an expert on HTML and homophones. Really was lucky that you were here for those two. But otherwise, Jeff will be back next week for office hours at 9 a.m. And I think he will actually be here on Thursday as well for his 9 a.m. chat with a guest. But otherwise, thanks for being such great, co-streamers with us. And if you have any additional questions, again, go to the alexa.design/Slack, post your questions in Slack. I am now part of that channel. I believe Ryan will be joining, and he can help answer questions as well. Anyways,
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, and we really appreciate you hanging out with us today.
Thanks, everyone.